Hello, I'm Kim Casey.
And I'm Darlene Hightower.
And we are Reclaiming Sisterhood. Welcome today to Radical Rest, how Black women reclaim time and energy. And we're here today with our special guest, Darlene Hightower. I want to give us a little context to this episode today. We will explore the terrain of rest, recovery, and resistance for Black women who carry the weight of leading, sustaining, and excelling, often without pause. You know, ladies, we're always on go. So many of us internalize the message, you must always show up. You must always deliver, and sometimes 10 times better than the next person. But what happens when we intentionally pause? What space opens up when we claim rest, not as a luxury, but as resilience and resistance? Our guest comes with insight into how slowing down can become a radical act and how reclaiming our time, our bodies, and our energy is essential, not just for our survival, but for our leadership, our legacy, and our liberation. Today we'll ask, what does rest look like when the systems expect us to grind? And how do we redefine productivity? And how can rest become a tool for justice? Today we're talking to Darlene O. Hightower. She is the former civil rights attorney. She's a former civil rights attorney, healthcare executive, a nonprofit leader, and a longtime community advocate. Her work has been recognized by U.S. News and World Report, Crain's Chicago Business, and the Chicago Tribune. Now an author and a speaker, Darlene writes about leadership, joy, justice, and the courage it takes to choose yourself. The Plot Twist, Press Pause and Reset Your Life, is her debut nonfiction book. Welcome, Darlene.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Okay, ladies.
We need to take a breath, right?
I know, because rest. Yes, exactly. Well, because, right, we on go. From the time your feet hit the floor in the morning to the time you put your feet up to go to bed at night, typically we're on go mode. And what I've been talking to people about, not just Black women, but also Black men, around how rest is revolution. Rest is an act of resistance, because many of us have been taught that we are supposed to be working almost to the grave, right? And I think about my own family. When I sit down, what do they say to me? What's wrong? Are you sick? Because you just can't be still. So why is rest such a revolutionary act for Black women?
I think for all the reasons that you just said, there's an expectation that we're literally supposed to be holding up the whole world for ourselves, our family, our friends, lately democracy. We're just supposed to be holding it all up. And if you look back, that comes from even when folks were enslaved and we're taking care of households, we're nursing other people's babies, all these things that we're supposed to be in the trenches and focused on everything outside of ourselves instead of internally focusing on ourselves.
Yeah, this is reminding me a little bit about post-traumatic slave syndrome and how this whole notion of work has been brought forward to the point to where our identities are so connected to that work and working that the minute that we don't have that, we feel a little bit lost. And I'm going to use a personal story. Is there was a job I had, and I was asked to leave, and because I was doing some things that they didn't want me to do, right? I was fixing the things. But I ended up having to leave. And I remember the next day standing at home in the kitchen, in the middle of the kitchen, and I actually walked in a circle for about 10 minutes until I just didn't know what to do. I was just kind of turning and turning and turning, like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And finally a voice said, go sit down. And I went and sat down. But I was standing because, again, on Always Go, I was like, thinking I had to be up doing something, and having your job taken away was like, okay, that was a huge part of it. So then how do I reclaim
Yep.
my space for myself?
Right, right. Well, in March of 2024, I walked away from a job. I was the CEO of the Metropolitan Planning Council, making a bunch of money. But the job was not aligned with my spirit. And, I was a part of this Black Women CEO group, and I hosted an event at my house. And we were literally talking about rest is resistance, and I'm like facilitating this conversation. I'm looking around the room at these amazing Black women leaders, and everybody was exhausted. Ooh, girl, I got my board, my this, my that, my staff. I got to raise money, like all of these things. And I'm like, this isn't rest and resistance at all. These are women with super women capes around their necks trying to save community in one hand and save their families in the other. And I was like, I'm tired of that. Like, who said that that's got to be the way my life is supposed to be? And at that point, I really started thinking about making a transition out of that role.
And how do you disrupt that, though? How do you automatically get to that point?
Yeah. So I think for me, I had been in the position for a couple of years, and it was very difficult, and it was impacting my health, heart palpitations, high blood pressure, all the things. And, then I have this gathering with the Black Women CEO, and like this light bulb goes off. And then I'm in church, literally praying about my circumstances. And I'm like, Lord, like, what am I supposed to do with all of this? And what I heard whispered to me, just like you mentioned, what I heard whispered to me was let them go. And at that point, I decided to be obedient. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen on the other side of this, but it's time to do something else. Because it's either me or them, and I'm going to choose me every time.
There it is. There it is. There it is. So what inspired you to write about the idea of press and pause?
That's such a great question, because I feel like in stepping away from this high-powered role, it's like my brain took a pause, and like all of this creative stuff just kind of started coming up. I've had stories in my head for over a decade. I write romance novels in addition to plot twists, but had all these stories in my head, but no time to sit down and write them down. And so over the last year, it's like, okay, you're having such cool experiences. You're traveling, you're spending time with your family and friends. Like, it's a breath of fresh air. You've lost weight. Like, all of these things have happened. You need to codify this stuff. You need to share your experience with other people. And that's where the plot twist came from.
Awesome. Yeah. Was there a time or experience in your life where your body was telling you to rest, but you wasn't listening?
Yeah, the last years of my life. I think, the body remembers, as they say, and there have definitely been times in my life where it's like, go sit down somewhere. Like, what are you doing? But you're like, I can't, because I'm trying to get that next title, that next promotion, that next bonus. I got, outcomes and strategies that I'm trying to do. People are watching me. And you keep going and you ignore it until you crash and burn. And it's like, okay, what the hell was that all about? Why was I doing that?
That's right. So then in this pause that you made for yourself, talk a little bit more about how your inspiration may have emerged, like your through the burnout, right? And through this transition.
Yeah.
There was some creativity, there was some inspiration that came out of that.
Oh, for sure. So years ago, I had done a fellowship where I went across the country talking to social justice leaders about social justice leadership and faith. And I talked to like 25 different people, some in Chicago too. And in my head, like just based on talking to them, I got this character like in my head, like this social justice, super hot, person. And I'm like, ooh, like what would his life be like? Like what would his challenges be? So I had this whole scenario and story in my head, but I tucked it away because I was off leading stuff and doing other things. And then when I took a break, it's like it's like having somebody in your head being like, put me on a page, write this down. This story is hot, like, write it down. So I'm like, okay. So you sit down and you write it. And it's kind of like when you're riding in your car and a song comes on that you haven't heard in like forever, but the words come back like that, and you're like singing at the top of your voice and everything is like there. That's how I think creativity is too. I think we all have that in us, but when we're so focused on grinding and doing all this other stuff, like it just gets suppressed. And then when you let go of that grind, it bubbles back up again, and all of this fabulous creativity comes out.
Yeah. What was the pivotal piece, or the turn from, okay, this job isn't lining up, I'm gone, the space of rest, to where you are now?
What happened during that?
Yeah, like what's the what was the pieces in there, right? So we talk about, I had this challenge, but now I'm here, right? I was at the bottom, now I'm up, right? We
What's
don't talk
happened in between?
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
Ooh, joy. Just like joy. And I talk about it in the book, like having time to spend with my mom who is going through health challenges. And you know how like you can't get engaged and involved in what's going on with your family if your mind is always off on the side. And so being able to walk with her on that journey and helping her on that journey, because I have a healthcare background, and being able to sit with her in spaces and advocate on her behalf, like, what the hell are y'all doing? How come y'all not doing this? Not that I'm a doctor, but just having that, extra voice has been very helpful. Spending time with my daughter. My daughter is 25, and she's going through her own, career stuff and getting her life together, and having time to coach her and listen to her and spend time with her, not through text or after work when I'm too exhausted to be fully engaged, has been a blessing. Spending time with my husband, traveling. We've gone to Mexico City. We went to Montreal. I traveled to New York by myself. Like, we just have been living and enjoying our lives. And then in the midst of that, I wrote The Plot Twist, and I've written 2.5 other romance novels because I'm working on the third one now. So it's just like having that time.
Okay, awesome. Now, taking your rest, and I said, my family's like, well, what's wrong with you? What's your family say about this?
My husband has been super supportive because he saw how much I was struggling. He saw me in tears and stressed out and trying to figure out, what to do and working my hardest to make things better. And so, of course, before making any decision, I had a conversation with him, and he's like, you do what you need to do. Like, I know that we're going to be all right. But this is the man who, over the course of our relationship, when I was fretting about a job, or I'm interviewing for a job, or I'm trying to make stuff work, he would always say, if they can't see your fabulousness, then you don't need to be there. That is a direct quote. And that has carried on through this, phase of my life.
And what about the older generation in your family?
Yeah, so very worried about what my mother was going to think. What? You ain't going to work. You know how it is, right? Like, how you going to take care of yourself? Like I just got out of college and like have no savings. I'm just doing willy-nilly. So yeah, like that was in the back of my head. And I talk about that too, because I was nervous to tell her. My mama has worked in some form or other since she was 9, even if it was just like in the kitchen making dinner for everybody, So I was very nervous about that. But, once I told her, because again, she had seen me struggling too, she's like, I'm so proud of you for taking that time and taking some time for yourself, and that still kind of makes me tear up, because to be seen and to be loved and supported despite what society says is the path you should be on is just a blessing.
It is.
It's a blessing.
It is. So the path that we should be on is grind culture. So how do we unlearn that grind culture when that grind culture tells us rest is being lazy?
Yeah, I think we need to redefine our priorities. And I think we need to think about, who are you grinding for? And how are you defining grinding? Because I mean, I will always work hard. Even like sitting here having this conversation with you, I'm prepping for it. I was writing earlier today. Like I'm doing things, but they're things that bring me joy. And so the question is, who are you grinding for? Who is benefiting from that grinding? I have friends that are working on vacation. Like, who benefits from that? You know, certainly not you. And we all know that we can give the biggest amount of loyalty in the world to these companies, and they'll turn around and dump you in a second and not think about it. That loyalty is not returned. So I would say, think about who you're grinding for, like what your goal is in that, and then redefine what it means to work hard, you know, because if you're only working hard and you're not taking care of yourself, you're not benefiting whoever you're working with or for, or yourself.
What are some practices that, for a young woman, if you're talking to your daughter of 25, she's entering the workforce, what are some strategies that they could put in place to at least begin the baby steps of this, right? Because it's an evolution. It's not one day you wake up and be like, here's all my boundaries.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Well, these young people, I don't know. But yeah.
That's true.
I mean, they'll set a boundary in a minute. Well, I'm not mad at that. I get it. I would like for my daughter to look at her life as like a portfolio. Like, I'm working and doing this, but I'm also spending time with my friends. I'm also like working out and meditating and praying and spending time on my own betterment, you know, instead of just being like grind. Like, who are you in totality as a person? And also, like, what is your end goal? Because I know when I was coming up, it's like, okay, I'm going to do college, and then I'm going to go to law school, and I'm like, I want to be a partner in a firm, like all these things. But again, it's like, is that what you want to do, or is that what you think you should be doing? So having conversations with her about what's the end goal and like what is it that you're ultimately trying to accomplish. And I think it's better to have a full life that has a lot of different, you know, components to it, including joy and fun, than it is to just be grinding
to be grinding.
Yeah.
Well, that's tough to be said because it's easier said than done.
I don't think so.
I think so, because I got a little bit of guilt when I'm not moving about, and when I'm sitting still and I'm not got my computer on my lap.
What's the source of that guilt, though? What are you guilty about?
That I'm not up doing something.
For who?
I know. I know. That's what I'm saying. I know.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, easy for me to say. I'm not working for nobody right now, but it's like, you know, it's like a mental shift, I think. And it's like, who's more important right now in that moment, you or them? You know?
Oh, no, I'm learning that.
Yeah.
But it's just, I know, though, when I first said, oh, you know what? I don't have any appointments today. I'm going to relax. I'm going to rest. But then I find myself grabbing the laptop or grabbing my phone or grabbing paper and pencil or something, right? Because to go from 100 miles an hour to 15, it's like, wait a minute, what's wrong? Why am I not up doing something?
Yeah.
And so I just feel like, for me, it was a little bit of guilt around not being up, being productive. Yeah, that I should be doing something.
I think we all need to cultivate stillness, you know, and I was telling myself that this morning as I'm like, you know, in prayer or whatever, meditating, and, you know, you're praying to God, I need this. Open the doors, opportunity for me. You know, I'm doing all this, right? And then like what I got back was, why don't you just listen for a change? What is God trying to tell you? Be still. Just like sit and listen instead of I got to do this list and God, I want that, you know? So I think finding ways to cultivate stillness is really important. And my daughter says this a lot too, and I've been sharing it as I've been talking to people. She'll say, "You're doing great, sweetie."
To you.
Doing great, sweetie. Yeah.
So affirmation.
Right. So it's like, you don't have to be moving all around and doing stuff and making work for yourself. You're doing great, sweetie.
Where is this resonating? Where is this? So this conversation, I know it resonates with me. You know, rest as a resistance, rest as sleep as medicine. I tell that to my kids all the time.
It's true.
Where is this? Where is it resonating? And where do we need it to resonate?
Yeah. You know, like I have been so encouraged. Like my book literally just came out like a month and a half ago, and people have been like reaching out to me on LinkedIn. Like I've done employee resource group like meetings for Erie
nice.
Health with like their Black ERG group. I did the Illinois Black Caucus Policy Forum a couple of weeks ago. Was talking about like women and work. Folks have reached out and be like, I need to sit down and have coffee with you, you know, and talk about whatever. Because I think we're all trying to figure out how do you balance the need to make a living, because ain't nobody trying to be broke, with caring for yourself. And so it's been individuals and also organizations reaching out.
And do you see this as something that organizations will take up for employees?
I would love it if they did, because I'm not walking in and saying y'all need to quit y'all jobs and just, you know, I mean, you know, it's been a blessing to be on sabbatical, but I'm a realist. But what I talk about is you can't be your best self and show up at a job as your best self if you're exhausted and you're not using the tools of rest over the course of your day or week or, you know, whatever. So like sabbatical can be defined in a lot of different ways. You can take a sabbatical in between your meetings because you've got a 10 or 15 minute block from one Zoom meeting to the next, or you're taking a walk on your lunch break just to like settle yourself down. So I would think that employers would be interested in that, because it is about energizing your workforce and showing that you care about their well-being. So
yeah, it reminds me, when you said that, it reminds me of Lauryn Hill quote, how you gonna win when you're not right within.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's exactly
What
it.
about this? So we had earlier on one of the podcasts, Cecile DeMello from Teamwork Inglewood, executive director, and you know, she's doing amazing things.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she is. And we talked about, you know, she talked about her legacy building in Inglewood. And the question I'm going to ask you is, let's talk a little bit about that internal tension between legacy building and self-preservation. Right? So we're out here, we got an idea, we got a vision for what we want to see in the world. But at the same time, does that come at the expense of Kim?
It shouldn't. It shouldn't. And I mean, I say this as somebody that's been in the workforce for 30 years, you know, in a variety of forms, like, you know, practicing law and working in healthcare, running a nonprofit, and no regrets at all. Like, I've had wonderful experiences. So I've done that work. Like, I've, you know, spent time doing it. But I also think to do that work, you have to carry a light inside yourself. And if you're not polishing that light on a regular basis, then not only are you missing out, but other people, your community, the world is missing out too. So when I think about legacy, I feel like I've worked long enough to have built a strong enough community, professional, you know, connections and all of that. And that's really great. Now I want to polish my light even more, because there's this Howard Thurman quote. It's like, what the world needs is people who have come alive. And that's, you know,
I like Howard
it's like,
Thurman.
don't ask what the world needs. What the world needs is people who have come alive. And that's what I'm working on right now.
Awesome.
That's the legacy.
So what do we need to do to come alive?
I think we need to slow down. We need to find places of stillness. Start slow. I mean, you know, like, you're not expecting people to like walk into their jobs and like
be ready day one.
No, but really think about where are the places in your life where you can take a pause and put yourself first, you know, and really be intentional about it. In the back of the plot twist, I say, like, here are a couple things you can do. One, I'm really big on knowing what your values are. So there are these core values cards, and you go through and you whittle down to like your top 3 values. Think about how your life is in alignment or not in alignment with that. Is your work in alignment with that or not? The things that you do on the side, are they aligned? So really getting that alignment is important. And then 2, making space and time for stillness is really important as well. And then 3, I think it's like everything is going to be all right. And that sounds like really trite, but when I look over the course of my life and all the times I've had breakdowns and, oh my God, like what's going to happen? You're so worried. God brought me through. So I think we all need to do roll calls over our lives and see how we've come over and made it.
Awesome. I'm going to end with one last question, and that is, what would change in our communities look like if more Black women chose restoration over performance?
It probably would look like Black Wakanda. I was talking to a leader on the West Side, and he's like, I want the West, this is going to be the West Side Wakanda. And that just really stuck with me. Like, if we came together better as community and we were really focused on what's important, like, that's really what it would be like. Can you imagine? Like, we're already amazing, tired as hell, but amazing. What would we be like if we were actually rested and with time to think and time to be, free?
Yeah.
We are physically free, but mentally shackled. So if we can rest and deal with that mental shackle, it's like, watch out. Yeah.
So if individual person chose rest, right? It would bring more joy.
It would bring more joy. It would bring more peace. I would have more time to recognize the light in myself and the light in other people. Because everybody's mad right now. Like, why are we mad? But if I'm rested and have a chance to really reflect and be the best person that I can be, I have no reason to be mad at you for whatever it is that you're doing. Man, that sounds so like, like Pollyanna, right? Especially like in these times.
I know,
right? In these times. But you know what? These fools are just not going to take my joy. I'm like out marching and protesting with signs and stuff. I'm like, no, because the way that our society and everything is going, and I say this as a civil rights lawyer, I'm like, this is some BS. Like, this is not what I want my daughter to inherit. So, yeah, I'm going to rest, and then I'm going to fight.
Yeah.
I'm going to rest, I'm going to fight.
So it's a balance.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. I'm not just, out tripping the life fantastic doing nothing. But I also know my limits and limitations, and I'm not going to be killing myself for other things or people
that
whatever.
Don't serve you.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. There we have it. We heard from Darlene. Go get this book, Plot Twist.
Plot Twist.
Rest is not the opposite of work.
It is not.
It's the foundation of liberation. For Black women, rest is not simply personal care. It's a political act, a rejection of grind culture, and a declaration that we are more than what we produce. Choosing rest is choosing ourselves, our healing, our longevity, and our wholeness. Share this podcast with a sister who's overdue for rest. Reflect on where you can pause, even just a little, and give yourself permission to breathe and sit still. Follow us, rate us, and review to help build our community where healing and wholeness are centered. And above all, reclaim your right to rest. Not tomorrow, but today. Welcome home.